Hey guys, so I haven't done a one-on-one podcast video in a while, and there's this reoccurring message that's happening within me that I just wanted to share. And I'm 26 years old, and that message is self-actualization. And what that means to me is becoming my true, authentic self, outside of the external, outside of what other people want me to become, outside of what other people want me to be. And so, when you're in, I would say, this stage of development within your 20s, you are transitioning from coming out of college or high school and transitioning into not having to listen to what your parents say, not having to listen to what your teachers say, leaving the guidance and then allowing your intuition to be your guide for life, because you have to trust that the adults that nurtured you and led you into this world had the best intentions, but at the same time, it's time to reparent and know that you have the best intentions for yourself, as long as, you're coming with self-love and self-recognition. And so this journey of self-actualization has been extremely difficult for me, for a variety of reasons, and there's layers. And I think one of them, and I'm going to touch upon this, one of them has been because I didn't have access to my time. Like when I was 22 and I started a job, I was working a 9 to 5, and then the weekends were for my friends, and I rarely had time for myself. And so I just ignored so much of what needed growth within myself, because I just had all of these things going on and all of these people pulling at me in all these different directions, and I just didn't take time to come to myself. And so again, time, and then like the stresses of the world. And then also allowing your insecurities to guide you, and allowing fear to guide you, and allowing people pleasing to guide you. There was like all of these things that were happening within me. So I would say that was my initial fog, I would say. Like everybody, I guess the best metaphor that I can put it is that when we're children, we know ourselves, we're naturally ourselves. We can naturally laugh, we can naturally feel, we can get angry, we come out perfect. But as we grow into the world, that visualization, that mirror of ourselves, which originally was clear, the world builds up a fog around it. And then the older you get, the more that external forces try to, try to impose themselves on that child, impose their ideas, impose their thoughts, impose, their culture on that child. And again, that child comes out perfect and then is tainted. Their image of themselves becomes tainted by the world, and then they can't see the mirror clearly anymore. The mirror has a lot of fog. And then so as you age into your adulthood, you then try to clear up that fog and try to see that mirror clearly, see yourself clearly. But you realize like, oh man, this is really difficult. I've got the world's image of me. I've got my family's image of me. I got my friend's image of me. And you're just trying to wipe that away. And then I have my image of me, which is only a reflection of how I feel about myself. So if there's not self-love within me, then it's really foggy out here, And then so if you don't take time to yourself to sit back and like reflect on those things in which the way the world has imposed itself onto you, right? If you don't take time to dissect that, if you don't take time to understand that, you're lost. You're lost. That's the best way I can put it. Like we're all lost souls, most of us, including myself. And so as you're going about your journey of life, confused, right? we think we're chasing that 9 to 5, at first, right? We're like, oh, I want to get that great job. And then when you get into that job, you sometimes get disappointed. Like myself, I was excited about my corporate job. And then when I got into it, I was disappointed. I was like, oh man, my manager doesn't see how intelligent I am. He just is like disregarding me as, someone that's easily replaceable, even though I'm getting the highest sales in the entire office, even though I'm the most reliable employee he has, even though I'm coming up with creative ideas to make, the relationships with our customers better, my manager doesn't value me, and then I was like going through that. And then I quit, became an entrepreneur, and then I was going through my entrepreneurial phase, trying to make as much money as I can, because I then switched my value and, having a 9 to 5 and having that corporate job and trying to please corporate America. I was like, that ain't for me, dog, that ain't for me. And then so I went from that mindset of like, nah, to, okay, I've got my own business now. I'm going to chase money and I'm going to do for me, and I'm going to do this and become the best in my industry. And as I'm chasing money, the money came. Like I've had the most money I've ever had in my life, I'm talking 6 figures in the bank account. I could physically see lots and lots of money. And I'm just like, but why isn't this making me happy? I've got over 6 figures in my checking account, but I still feel unfulfilled. I still feel lost. And I still feel unimportant. I still feel disregarded. I'm just like looking around in the relationships that I had with people, and I'm like, they're not being any depth to it. They're not being any like real closeness, and I'm just like, okay, so, it's not the money, right? So like I chased the money. I got as much money as I could. I'm living as cheaply as I could. I have all this time to myself, right? And I'm realizing, at least for me, that ain't it either. And then so now, like, I'm in this, like, crucial moment of my life. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm, like, asking God, because I want you guys to know that I have a deep relationship with God. And I'm asking God, like, God, what is it? Like it's not the people pleasing for me, right? It's not the money chasing for me. It's not making myself perfect for men for me. It's not any of that. Like, it's really not. Like, that's not what I live for. That's not who I live for. What's going on? And so like I'm sitting in these moments and I'm trying to self-reflect, because like sometimes as we move throughout life, we move in the fog. So we're blinded, right? Like we're going and we're going and we're going. Like I was flipping and I was flipping and I was flipping for 2 years. And like the quality of my life had been work, chase money. But there were so many other areas in my life in which I wasn't happy. So like this pandemic, what it had done for me, it forced a slowdown. And, it forced me to have time with myself. And what that also did, I just realized, I'm like, oh man, I don't like making money in that way. Luckily I had a passive streams of income, so I am able to support myself. But for now I have to change my business model, and I'll talk about that later. But either way, work in a way that works for me. And now that I have more time to myself than ever, I'm sitting back and reflecting, like, and asking God again, like, God, what is it? What is it? Like, I'm missing something. Like, there's something in my life in which I know that there's a deep well of passion and gratitude and a love and a lust for life that is like literally missing within inside of me. And like I'm at this point of trying to figure it out, and I realize the reason why I can't figure it out is because I've never took the time to self-actualize and to get to know myself, right? For the years and years and years in my 20s, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a big people pleaser. And one of the ways in which I people please is that I am pretty much down for, oh, like, you want to go here? Let's go here. You want to do that? Let's do that. Down for whatever my friends want to do. But at the same time, I'm not as like, hold up, wait a minute. I'm not with hanging out with you in this way. So why don't we meet like at a bookstore or a book signing? Like I'm such an avid reader now, you guys. Like as I'm getting to know myself more and more and more, I love to read. I love to interact with other entrepreneurs. I love to seek wisdom, really, because I love to have experiences that create catapult changes within my life and within my mindset and grow me as a human being and as a person. That is my jam, and that's like literally the only space that I want to hold when I'm with other people. It's like, if we're not growing together, if we're not in spaces of personal growth, like I don't know if I want to even be there, and it's tough to like, when you're self-actualizing, like literally change the nature of your relationships with your family, change the nature of the relationships with your friends, because you're becoming this new person. And it's this person you always were, but it's this person that you are yet to introduce people to, right? I'm not actually a drinker. The last time I went out with my friend for her birthday, we had such an amazing time, but I actually didn't drink any alcohol. Like I was literally sitting there dancing, vibing to music, completely sober, because I had instituted a new idea within myself that I don't need to heavily drink to have fun, and if I need to do that for at least for me, so I'm not talking about anyone else, but if I need to always get drunk around this group of people in order to experience some sort of like euphoric fun environment, then me and these groups of people, maybe we're not vibing on the level of like where we could have a great time sober, right? And so now I try to listen to my intuition and be sober in all the spaces I am with my friends, because I want to comprehend and understand, like, am I having fun with this person? Is this a good time or is it not? And if it's not, then I need to adequately remove myself, and just like standing firm in that is like my new beginning, and I am also extremely spiritual. Like I pray every single day. Like I literally was just in my backyard. I'm gonna cry. I was just in my backyard. And I pray in nature. Like that's my huge thing. That's why I love to travel. When I went to St. Martin and I was on the beach and I'm in this crystal clear blue water and I'm like looking up at the sun and the moon, at all points of the day. And I'm having full blown conversations with the universe, with God. And I'm like, providing gratitude, but also asking for things like clarity and into a stronger sense of intuition, and to remove people in my life that don't need to be there, and just like all of these things. And there's so many life-changing events that happen during that trip, and like my prayers are continuously being answered. And it's like this crazy thing to like have a full-blown relationship with God, and then seeing God in different ways like actualize what you've been asking for is the most powerful thing you will ever experience in your entire life. But either way, so I was just in my backyard like praying to God, like thanking God for investing in me to be able to become a more conscious person and become more aware of within the spaces that I've been in, and allow myself to understand that, past Nicole hasn't protected herself the way that she needed to. And now I need to move differently, and I need to protect myself, protect my energy, and invest in myself, invest in my energy to continue my own path of growth. And, it's like, I guess when I say I'm crying, it's like a mourning, because I just feel so sad for like that little girl who didn't love herself enough to not waste time in spaces and energy that she didn't belong. And now that I'm growing up into like my fullness as a human being, and realizing how differently I have to move in order to honor myself, it is, it's just a lot, you know, it's like almost every facet of your life. You're like, oh man, like these spaces aren't me. These spaces aren't me. And then if like if the spaces I've created aren't me, I need to change my whole life up. That's so intimidating, you know? Um, and then instituting boundaries with people. And I always felt like when I got text on my phone, I needed to respond right away. Like, oh, this person texted me, like, let me get back to them. And now I just put my phone down, like, oh no, I'm gonna give 4 hours to myself to focus on what it is I need to do, because I'm not trying to have back and forth with this person right now. Like, I don't have space for that. Like, I'm doing something, you know, and then like honoring what I'm doing and giving it my full undivided attention is so powerful. And anyways, back to this conversation of self-actualization. So I'm 26 years old, and I've moved from like schoolgirl. I've moved from the corporate girl, and then I've moved from the entrepreneurial girl, and then I'm just sitting in like the spiritual abundance that, and like the teaching and like the love and like the giving girl. And I want to say girl, but you know, because sometimes I still feel like a girl inside, but I'm a full blown woman. And understanding that, accepting that, honoring that, and moving forth in that hits different. Um, but I just wanted to get on here and just express and share the journey that, the personal journey that I am actively going through. So you guys can see, you know, this podcast isn't all about business. This podcast is about financial growth, spiritual growth, emotional growth, mental growth, and physical growth. This podcast is me. You know, this podcast is how I want to grow as a human being, and like the people that I want to surround myself around. Everybody that's featured in my podcast, I admire and I respect, and I'm trying to be more like, you know. And I don't want you guys to sit here and think about like, oh, like she's some sort of expert in everything that she's talking about. It's no, like I'm literally interviewing people because I want to learn about what it is that they do, because I'm trying to navigate me and my stuff. I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly growing, and you know, I'm constantly trying to become a better version of myself for my future family. You know, eventually I want to have my own family. Eventually I want to have my own daughter, my own son, and be able to pour into them correctly and be able to assist them with their own personal growth in a way that doesn't, you know, harm them or leave like some sort of trauma. So, like, me becoming the best version of myself ultimately is going to be a tool so that when I'm ready to raise a family, it helps them become the best versions of themselves, and I could just be a resource for them. And it's, you know, it's really, really difficult to challenge yourself to be the best version of yourself, because you then have to admit that you're not. You know, like that, you know, I have an ego just like everybody else, you know, and sometimes my ego wants to believe like, Nicole, you're great, you're doing amazing, sweetie, like you're awesome. But at the end of the day, like I'm not the best version of myself, you know. There in so many ways, in so many ways. And like me admitting that, and me admitting that the process of learning and the process of becoming never ends, and like I need to pour into my growth as much as possible before I have kids, before I can affect them with my trauma, with like my toxicity in the ways in which that I might have in certain areas. And I need to like grow as much as possible before I'm responsible for other human beings, is an act of self-love and an act of selflessness. So, you know, I'm out here trying my best to support the woman that I want to be. And the people that I'm interviewing on my podcast are people who are becoming as well, people that I admire, people that also have something to contribute to the conversation. And I want to make it a point to say that and honor that being a Black woman and going through this process of growth and self-development has been an extremely difficult path to navigate. As a Black woman and growing up as a Black woman and a Black girl, I'll tell you guys straight up, I grew up not believing in myself as the idealized version of beauty, of intelligence, of worthiness, of abundance, of like delicate and soft and special. I grew up thinking myself as like, oh man, I hate to say it, but trash. Like, I just wanted other people. Like, I thought I was lucky to be in the presence of like friends. Like, oh my God, you want to be friends with me? I thought like I was the lucky one to be friends with this person, that this person accepted me into their space. I didn't realize like the value that I had within the spaces that I held. Like, I had no self-value whatsoever growing up as a child because, Black girls were always kind of depicted as sidekicks in like the sitcom era, in the Disney era. Like, the Black girl was always like the assistant to, the white character, to the white main character. The Black girls were never the main characters, except for in That's So Raven. That was one of my favorite shows. And The Proud Family. I like thank those directors and those producers for contributing that for us in those moments. But I would say, compared to like the percentage wise of what I was exposed to, it was like 9 times out of 10, Black girls were kind of just like there. And then so I really internalized that as a kid. Like, I was just always like, sitting there helping my other friends, because I was in majority white spaces because my mom tried to provide the best housing and the best education for me as possible because she is that woman. But I was in majority white spaces, and sometimes those aren't the best for the growth of Black children. We can just be real. Sometimes majority white spaces and teachers don't have the best interest of the Black child. Fair, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s. You know what I'm saying? So I felt that I was kind of always watched more closely. Like, people were kind of, when I say people, I mean teachers were kind of like waiting on me to do something bad. And I always felt that I had to be perfect in those environments and in those spaces. And then I felt like no matter how perfect I was, it wasn't even good enough for the faculty in which I was residing. And remember, like, I went to boarding school, so like I couldn't leave these spaces. Like, I didn't have like a home that I could go back to at the end of the day and have like a safe space. It was just like 24/7, the watchful eye of white women and white men. And older white women and older white men, and like constantly being under their watch and being scrutinized by them. And so that started in 8th grade in boarding school, when I went to boarding school at a military school in Virginia. That's when that journey of like, of course, as a child, I had no idea or was not prepared for their lack of respect or like love or like understanding for me as a Black child. Of course, like, I just think like, oh, they're adults and they have the best interest for me, So with that being said, what that did to me, constantly being under the watchful eye of whiteness. Okay, so I'm going to openly talk about this because I think it's important. What that did to me was create a version of myself that like isn't me. You know what I mean? And so like that people pleaser thing that I was talking about is very, very hard for me to release and let go of, right? And then that image of myself that I always like have to look pretty in front of people. Like I always have to wear makeup, right? My hair always has to be done. Like I can't have kinky hair. That's not what they want. Again, with that people pleaser. And then always like kind of carrying in my mind what other people think of me. Like, you know, instead of just like not giving energy to that type of narrative and just like letting that go and doing my own thing, like just in the back of my head, like always caring about what people think. And now that I'm self-actualizing at 26 years old, as I have my own business, as I'm trying to grow into my fullness, I'm realizing these things about myself, and I'm realizing how those environments negatively affected me and how these traits that I may have no longer serve me in the spaces that I want to go. So it's like, as a Black woman, it's really, really interesting, and it's really, really difficult to kind of like see and understand in the fullness. And another one in which of the ways that I've had to grow and understand is that it's okay for me to be mad. It's okay for me to be upset. It's okay for me to express emotion. Growing up, I never expressed an angry emotion. I never expressed a sad emotion in front of people. I was like completely like numb and emotionless because I could empathetically feel that's what people wanted from me. So like that's what I became. So like I never expressed anger, which is an important emotion to understand, like if you're angry at someone, right? And then so like as I'm growing up and I'm becoming more and more and more myself, I realize like when I get angry with my friends now, some of them shut down. Like, and like it becomes this big problem when I'm just like angry at a small thing that they did and I express that anger. It's like this big problem. And it's like, no, like I'm allowed to be angry at you. You're allowed to be angry at me. We're allowed to be frustrated. These are just normal human emotions. And I'm not going to fog myself and my emotions for your comfort. I did that my entire life. I'm choosing not to live like that anymore. I am someone with a multitude of emotions, and if you're going to be in my life, it's just something that you get to experience with me. You know, we can all be ourselves here, and I'm realizing like the more and more and more I'm myself. And even with my family, like I'd say like during the pandemic, I got mad with a couple members of my family a couple times, and they were like, you know, they were so like, Nicole's mad at me. Like it was like the worst, you know. And then but the more common it became for me to express myself with them, the better relationship we had, because I wasn't harboring resentment in my relationships with them, because I wasn't because I was expressing what I felt. So there was no like hidden resentment between us, and our relationships have actually become more abundant. So it's just interesting and crazy how important this level of growth is. And I just wanted to share it with my listeners because it's been really, really difficult. And I wanted to like give you guys that piece of me. It's been really, really difficult to be myself unapologetically. And I know why. Like obviously like external racism, microaggressions, like the little stuff that occurred that I've like inherited in my life, and like how I've allowed it to shape me. And then like breaking out of that and becoming my own self these past 2 years has been a rewarding journey. And it's been a difficult one, but I'm continuously investing in it. And whoever is watching and like needs to kind of like see someone like me struggle with this, but like fight for it, we're in this together, and I love you, and I want you to know that every step forward, I'm going to continue to try to be as authentic as freaking possible, because you, the listener, you know, you, the person who's following me along this journey, like I want you to see the fullness of the character that I'm trying to represent here on YouTube. This isn't easy. This isn't like being an entrepreneur and then like being one track minded literally blinds you to like the realities of your life and the realities of who you are, and then not taking time to to dissect that, and not like looking back and like investing in your emotional and your mental health and your physical health, and then the relationships you have with your family is unhealthy. And that's what I was doing for 2 years. I was just so one track minded. I forgot about all this other stuff. So now that I'm sitting down and I'm reflecting with myself and I'm becoming more whole, it honestly is making me a better business owner and a better business partner. The things that I'm realizing about myself, like for example, I want to take my business from 6 figures to 7 figures, and one of the ways in which I found that I can do that in the way that serves me, in the way that serves me, in the way that I want to work, is having multiple streams of income that are passive. So like these past 2 years, I've been working very, very actively in my businesses to the point where I had no life, for myself. And so now I'm working in the ways which are passive. I'm buying a property in Philly that's going to become an Airbnb, and I'm trying out the Philly market with Airbnb. You don't need to buy, you can rent, but right now I'm purchasing, right? And then with my flipping, I'm building partnerships with contractors, so that way I don't really need to be like getting materials or like being in the house painting, and I'm building relationships, lending relationships, contracting relationships, so I can work within the ways that work for me, and I have my rentals, and I'm looking at starting a Turo business, and I'm looking at all these different passive ways of making money, and I'm building the building blocks to get from 6 to 7 figures. But there's a wholeness to it that I wanted to show you guys, because it's an integral and important part of the process. In order for you to get to your abundance, you have to invest in your personal growth. And I just want to be honest about that. If you liked this conversation, if you want more of these one-on-ones, it's really going to have to be something where you put in the comment section, Nicole, I loved this. Nicole, do this again. Nicole, can you talk on this? I need you to like this video. I need you to comment on this video. I need you to share this video with someone who may need to hear it, who may need to be exposed to this level of vulnerability with people that they respect, who may need to be exposed to this level of authenticity. If this is like stuff that you guys want more and more of, let me know, because today I'm just trying something different. All right, everybody have a good weekend. Peace out.